Hello and welcome to Consumer Choice Radio. We are broadcasting live on multiple platforms at the moment, trying to enjoy a good time. Welcome to Consumer Choice Radio. We normally broadcast on the Big Talker station out of 106.7 FM in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we're doing a little bit of an experiment today. I'm going to try to go live here on the nets with all of you. And first, before I do, my name is Yaël Ossowski. I am coming to you right now live from Vienna, Austria. Plenty of exciting things going on, but I'm most excited to be joined by my great and amazing co-host, Mr. David Clement, out there in Toronto, Ontario. Hello, David.
Hello, Yaël. I hope you're doing well, staying safe, staying inside, and not going stir crazy like the rest of us.
No stir craziness here. I think all is well good here at the Yaël Ossowski camp, the Ossowski family camp. We're doing pretty well. We are one of the countries, as I've mentioned before, that has opened up. Austria's opened up, so the stores are beginning to open. They're beginning to awaken from their terrible slumber that has been imposed upon us, and it's looking a bit brighter. And the beautiful weather today. Why not?
Yeah, and maybe walk through what that looks like for some of our listeners, because for a lot of our North American listeners, what you're about to describe is probably going to sound a little bit like paradise.
Yeah, so what we've had now in Austria has been able to flatten the curve. We've had shut down now for about 1 month, and starting on Tuesday, the day after Easter Monday, there was the opening up of small shops under about 2,000 square feet, 400 square meters, and then also garden centers, things like Lowe's and Home Depot, obviously, but of the Austrian variety. And it's been interesting to see. I mean, there's definitely a lot more people walking around from what I can see. I haven't actually been to any of these shops. I have been to the grocery store and things as normal. But I promised last week I'd get to the hardware store. I haven't been able to do it yet, I need to. I need a couple bolts to put in the wall,
Yes, you can get your building supplies for handyman Yaël around the house. Now all those tasks you've been procrastinating about, you got to get around to them.
I know, and because I can't, I've been too much of a chicken to get it, from any of these hardware stores. I just gonna have to order on Amazon. Prime now. So there's plenty of stuff to get to. David, again, we mentioned this before. We are experimenting a little bit with this episode. This broadcast goes out on the radio out of a national FM station down in Wilmington, North Carolina, 106.7 FM. That's Saturdays at 10 o'clock Eastern in the morning. And then we also have our podcast that goes out on consumerchoiceradio.com. But we wanted to try our hand at streaming, so we've got this on all platforms right now. Let's see, Twitter, Periscope, Facebook. We've got YouTube as well. Even Twitch, we've got that clicked in. So trying something out, seeing how interesting it would be if who knows, maybe we can get more people involved and figure out how this internet stuff worked. I mean, look, we're stuck indoors, so why not experiment and make sure that people can get more access to awesome consumer choice information everywhere we are.
Absolutely.
So before we get into the big, so in case you don't know, we don't use the C word on this program, C virus. There are a lot of algorithms out there that will cut you down if you use this. So we've decided to replace it with the Carole Baskin virus.
Yes.
So if you do hear us, mention that, please do stay alarmed. We're not insane. We're not crazy, but we're just trying to avoid getting censored and downvoted and demonetized and everything else on all channels. So before we get into too much of the Carole Baskin virus, there's a lot of great clips that David has sent me. I mean, I'm super impressed. We've been doing this now for a couple months, and David has come to the table with some nice, clean, edited clips. I love it.
Yes, hopefully the listeners love them too. Did my best.
All right, so David, why don't you go ahead and put one on the tee for us? What should we dive into here? Because I want you to start. I want you to feel proud, dust off those typing fingers, and tell me which one that we're going to play.
Let's go with Bill Maher, because Bill Maher created quite a stir with his 5 or so minute rant about the Carole Baskin virus and Chinese wet markets. So we narrowed that down to about a minute or so. We want to play that and obviously discuss about some of the things he's talking about in this quite legendary clip.
It's not racist to point out that eating bats is batshit crazy. In 2007, researchers at the University of Hong Kong wrote, the presence of a large reservoir of SARS-CoV, like viruses in horseshoe bats, together with the culture of eating exotic animals in southern China, is a time bomb. Dr. Fauci says we should force a global closure of the wet markets because the current crisis is a, quote, direct result of them. On Monday, the UN's acting head of biodiversity said the same thing. So when someone says, what if people hear Chinese virus and blame China? The answer is we should blame China, not Chinese Americans. But we can't stop telling the truth because racists get the wrong idea. There are always going to be idiots out there who want to indulge their prejudices. But this is an emergency. Don't we have bigger tainted fish to fry? Jesus, if the sun was exploding, Twitter would pile on the first guy who called it a dwarf star. Sorry, Americans, we're going to have to ask you to keep two ideas in your head at the same time. This has nothing to do with Asian Americans, and it has everything to do with China.
China. I love that. Look at Bill Maher. He comes around every now and then. He comes around every now and then.
Every once in a while, he throws some punches that stick, and I think that was a pretty good one. I mean, the full context of the clip, for those who are listening who maybe haven't seen it, is he's talking about the wet markets and the concept of having all of these different types of animals in the same place, and just the chances of various viruses coming from these places, and saying that it's okay to be critical of these practices, and there's nothing bigoted or racist of making those statements, despite what some of his fellow lefties may think. So I really liked it. I mean, I think he highlights the paternalistic aspect a little bit there of that viewpoint that we can't be critical of let's say the cultural practice of eating bats, and saying that it's really quite simple to just differentiate that from obviously Chinese people. So yeah, I loved it. I thought he hit the nail on the head there in terms of parsing the middle ground between those who maybe have unsavory opinions about Asian Americans, who are obviously wrong, and the people on the other side, on the far other side of this, who think that just simply criticizing wet markets is somehow bigoted or racist or something along those lines. So I really loved it.
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. You can go back and listen to consumerchoiceradio.com. We've had a couple of that. Just the journalists who were there at the White House press briefing asking Trump about this. Like, why do you keep saying Chinese virus? And he said very simply, because it came from China. China. Okay?
It's a strange world out there.
Now,
China.
I mean, this may just be part of like a distraction or a diversion tool. And there's certainly some good conversations that can be had on that front. But at the same time, I mean, it's not really that outrageous for him to be talking about where the virus came from. We know where it came from. I think the idea that we can't talk about where it came from or how it developed, which is an ongoing debate, is silly. And so it's nice to see Bill Maher kind of carry the flag on the lefty side of politics for some sanity and reason in this conversation.
Yeah, and obviously I've been a huge fan of Bill Maher for a long time. I mean, since I was probably 12 years old, like one of my first favorite comedians, someone who's able to blend together politics and comedy and did so in a great way. He's kind of gone a bit insane the last couple of years. I mean, he even dropped $1 million on Obama. Come on. He didn't need any money. I mean, he got plenty of billions of dollars, didn't need an additional million from you, but okay. That's another topic. Let's look at some headlines here, a couple of articles that we noticed throughout the week. I've been keeping an eye on David's Twitter feed. This is the problem, David, when we have too much of a hive mind. I think we spend too much of the week talking together, so we end up following a lot of the same news.
Yes. Yeah, we see the same headlines.
Yeah, and that's a bit problematic. I think the Twitter algorithm is working against us now. It's trying to make sure we don't have a diverse consumer choice radio program. But there have been a couple things that I've seen. There's an interesting article from Vice. We talked about this a little bit last week. These 30 regimes are using coronavirus to repress their citizens. Dog cages, crackdowns, censorship, surveillance, expanded police powers. Authoritarians are having a moment. So they talk about examples in China, Russia, Belarus, Venezuela, Cambodia, the Philippines, Uganda, Poland, Ghana, Thailand, Chile. I mean, so many examples. It goes from...
Don't forget Hungary.
Yeah, Hungary as well.
Yeah.
I mean, even Serbia as well. That one has been very interesting because China has a huge sort of foothold in Serbia. Serbia, one of my favorite places, of course. And apparently the prime minister approved a decree that gave the government total control over information. What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a scary thing. And we're starting to see some of that debate creep into discourse here in North America, because I know that in Canada, at least, the federal liberals have kicked the tires on potentially some sort of disinformation or misinformation bill, where the government, rather than just the platforms, I mean, these private platforms are editing or monitoring what is being said about the Carole Baskin virus, and just trying to do their due diligence to ensure that false information isn't getting out there. And we kind of see that happening in real time. But the government is now threatening to essentially do the same and attach some sort of criminal penalty to it. So it does raise some red flags for those who care about free speech and free expression, because, I mean, anyone who's ever had an opinion about anything knows that there's a very fine line between purposely spreading disinformation and just being wrong. And you don't want to criminalize people just being wrong. That's not, that's antithetical to the societies that we want to live in terms of allowing or protecting free speech, whether it's constitutionally in Canada, the United States, or even internationally in terms of UN human rights. So scary times. As our pal Bernie Sanders would say, it is a strange world out there.
It's a strange world out there.
No doubt. And with Bernie Sanders, you mentioned him. I don't know if you want to jump right into the political stuff just yet. I got one or two more links on this, but we'll get back to Bernie Sanders and Beau Biden and what's happening there. Here's another link that'll kind of... This one will make you cringe a bit. This is from the San Francisco Chronicle, our good friends in California. San Francisco mayor caps Uber, Postmates, DoorDash delivery commissions. As struggling San Francisco restaurants pin their hopes on staying open on delivery and takeout orders, city officials have stepped in to lower the commissions charged by the makers of apps like Uber Eats, Grubhub, DoorDash, Caviar, and Postmates. Typically, these companies charge commissions that range from 10% to 30% on an order. On Friday, Mayor London Breed announced a temporary cap of 15% on commissions. The cap will remain in effect for the duration of the local state of emergency or until restaurants are able to open again for dine-in service. There you go, Ban Francisco. There's yet another tally in your corner for why you're the greatest city in the world for getting screwed.
Yeah, like so they passed that contractor law statewide.
Yes, AB5, statewide, California.
Huge mistake, really limits the viability of being a delivery driver or an Uber driver for people, or a delivery driver for things like DoorDash and Grubhub and whatnot. Then, not only do they do that, you now have local ordinance cracking down on how much these people can make. I mean, I think the San Francisco city council or legislators, or however we refer to them, need to give their head a shake and realize that these people are first responders in many sense. They're essential services because they're delivering things that people need. Why is it an issue for them to be able to make more money? I mean, this is insane.
Well,
And by
and also,
limiting
it doesn't
the
cost nothing to put the technology together, to do the tracking, to set up the order, to connect all the credit cards. I mean, it's not free to do this stuff.
Of course not. And everyone's doing it voluntarily and willingly, and people are providing this service of actually getting food to your door. And all this does is make it harder for them to do it and make it less attractive for restaurants to actually participate in this new kind of temporary economy of consistent food delivery. And so while other jurisdictions are basically freeing up their economies and making it more open and more competitive and more consumer centric in light of the pandemic, San Francisco is going the other way. And I mean, the consequences are obviously going to be pretty clear. It's just going to be harder for these businesses to stay in business, which nobody wins.
The consequences will never be the same. And there's a lot that we could cover on this. There's just so many bad laws that are being passed on this. I decided to weigh in. I put my toe in the water a bit. There's an article that I wrote that was published out in Waco, Texas for the moment. It's being syndicated, so that's going out. But essentially, the argument that I was just kind of making is that everyone's criticizing Trump for wanting to open up the economy. You say, oh, you're trying to kill people, and, this whole terrible thing. Carole Baskin's virus, everybody's, cranking up all their political rhetoric to the nth degree. The only point I made is like, look, a lot of people are stuck at home, not able to work, and situations vary between states, between cities, between situations. I think we can lift these like universal lockdowns, and added to that, you can do it in a smart way to actually save lives. Require people to wear masks. Let's do the social distancing. Let's keep that up. A lot of people will probably love that. Social distancing, not having to interact too much in public. Keep that up if people want to. Wear the mask. Be sure we have all the PPE. Let's make sure our hospitals have all the resources they need. But we don't need to shut down every job and every position. And I mean, this is the kind of crazy thing.
Here's the thing that the critics don't. And I mean, I'm no Trump supporter, but we do have to look at it this way. There are some businesses that remain open through the crisis. So a grocery store, for example. How are grocery stores staying open? Well, they're limiting the amount of people in the store at a time. They have very strict social distancing rules. In many instances, some are actually making you use hand sanitizer when you get there, encouraging you to wear masks. All very smart things in terms of limiting exposure to the virus. Now, what if we applied those same rules to other businesses that aren't providing food? Could they stay open? Could they not go bankrupt? Could people still have a job? If you can establish that you can do those things without drastically increasing risk, then I think you have to give it a shot, because we've established that we can run grocery stores in ways that are responsible. So we have to be able to run some other businesses in ways that are responsible. And that doesn't mean we should just like rip off the Band-Aid and the casinos are going to be open and the clubs are going to be open and we're going to have 20,000 people at a baseball game. Like, all of that is going to take time. That's not what reopening the economy looks like. But I think we can apply some best practices and some standards from these essential businesses to what was deemed non-essential. And allow for some of these business owners to open up shop and some of these employees to get back to work, which obviously not only has benefits in terms of the economic arguments, and I think that those are certainly important, but talk about the mental health benefits of being able to actually do something. You're sitting at home, you're furloughed, you're waiting for your government check in the mail, the bills are piling up. You're trying to negotiate with, let's say you have a mortgage with the bank for deferrals. There are interest rates. All of these things are compounding on top of each other. And so if there is any way where we can empower people to dig themselves out of that, I think that's a positive. And And so I'm cautiously optimistic that the United States and Canada, when they get around to it, can follow the lead of countries like Austria, who are starting this slow roll of businesses being allowed to reopen.
Yeah, and the status quo right now in the United States is you've gotten over 16 million people who filed for unemployment. As far as we know, these are just the latest numbers, and that's just in the last month. And most models are saying that we might have as high as 20% unemployment by summer. It's just crazy. And especially if you actually look at the numbers and you look at the different states, I mean, because that's really what this is about. It's about federalism. It's about what are certain states doing. I mean, you have a good number of states, about, let's say, I think 19 of them, actually a third of the country almost, they have less than 100 fatalities. Very tragic.
Yep.
None of those lives should have been lost, but you can't shut down an entire state's economy when you don't have the scale of New York City or Milan or Wuhan, China. And, a lot of people are going to suffer. This is, this is just a point that we're bringing up, not an original point. So I wanted to bring on a perhaps future friend of the show to make that point for us. David, are you open to that?
Sure, yeah, let's hear it.
So this is Bjorn Lomborg, Danish political scientist, and he's being interviewed on 60 Minutes Australia, which is like one of my favorite programs on YouTube. It is amazing. Let's listen to what he says.
Yep.
At some point, there's a tipping point. At some point, we actually need to say, this is enough. If we go further, we're actually going to damage the economy more than the few extra people we're going to save. This makes people feel very, very uncomfortable because you feel like we should save everyone, but we never do. In a society, we always make trade-offs.
So global warming is real, and it's a problem.
Danish political scientist Dr. Bjorn Lomborg is a globally recognised economist and big thinker who's turned his expertise to the coronavirus conundrum.
In Australia, the speed limit is 110 kilometers an hour. If you want to save everyone who dies in traffic, you should just take it down to 5 kilometers an hour. Nobody would die. But of course, the point is you don't want to do that because it also has huge social ramifications. We should do a lot for corona, but we shouldn't do everything. Just like we should have speed limits, but we shouldn't have speed limits down to 5 kilometers an hour.
Dr. Lomborg reckons going too hard on lockdown is a strategy that will come back to bite us in the long run. The middle ground, he believes, means opening society up and accepting more coronavirus deaths in the short term.
When you close down primary and secondary schools, when you close down jobs, are you actually creating more damage, more long-term death, more long-term unemployment and unpleasantness for the whole population compared to what you're achieving in saved lives?
I mean, we in Australia are just taking the policy decisions on the chin so far. But that's it, isn't it? How far do we go? And how do we sensitively strike that balance between saving lives and crippling the entire economy?
So I think a lot of people want to do a lot of good for the coronavirus. And so they're willing to say, look, I'm going to take it on the chin, as you say. But ask yourself this. Do you think the same people, when they finally get out from this lockdown and see the devastation of their economies, then being asked when the second wave comes around and say, I'm sorry, could you do it all over again? And then a third time. Remember, we'll have to keep open, close, open, close, open, close, all the way till we get a vaccine. And so we need to ask ourselves, how much is too much? It's not clear what that answer is, but we need to have that conversation.
Oh, that's great. And that's Danish political scientist Bjorn Lomborg, who's speaking to 60 Minutes Australia. It always helps to have an Australian voice at some point in the program.
I mean, and the thing I love about Bjorn, I mean, I have my own biases because he was, I think I was maybe grade 11 when I read one of his first books. But he essentially is like the ultimate cost-benefit analysis guy. And that comes across as really cold sometimes. But he just looks at every problem and says, okay, what can we do? What's it going to solve? Is there a better way? How do we actually manage this? And the crazy part is that and I think this is maybe what the interviewer failed to hint at, which I would have loved, is that there are examples of economies that haven't had to go under full shutdown, where they're managing to keep exposure to a minimum and managing, obviously, to keep deaths at a minimum, which is extremely important. So it's always great to have an alternative view like that presented, and someone who basically looks at the numbers and says, okay, well, there is a point where it isn't going to be worth the cost. Are we there yet? Are we not there yet? What other alternatives can we do? So always love hearing Bjorn. Maybe one day we'll have him on the show, and then we can rightfully call him a friend of the show.
Yeah, future friend of the show.
Future friend of the show.
So we've sent him a friend request. We'll see what happens.
Yes.
So yeah, great example there. You're listening to Consumer Choice Radio. This is broadcasting right now all out on the streams, whether it be Periscope or, let's see, we got Facebook, we've got Twitch, we got YouTube, and we broadcast this on the radio Saturdays on the Big Talker, 106.7 FM, bigtalkerfm.com. You can find all of our show notes and everything on our website, so we're not just plucking things out of the air. We promise this is the real stuff. This is a program that is presented by the Consumer Choice Center, of which David and I are both a part, and we've been working with our colleagues to stay busy, to stay very, very productive during this time. Plenty of articles being published, plenty of meetings, plenty of things that we're trying to do to continue pushing for consumer choice. I mean, the battle doesn't end here. I know, David, you've been pretty busy, and you've got a couple podcast appearances coming up. You've been sitting on some government committees. I mean, you're a busy boy up there in good old Canada, aren't you?
Trying to be, yes, trying to be.
Yes, well, and since we're discussing Canada a little bit, we always like to bring in a Canadian example or two, just because it's an interesting place. There's fairly similar government, and there's at least some things that sometimes we can learn. And I guess you have another clip that you wanted to present us, coming from Alberta this time.
Yes. So I'll tee this up. This has to do with the approval process for medicines. And this clip is about Jason Kenney, who is the Premier of Alberta. For our American listeners, this is kind of like Canada's Texas, resource-heavy, very conservative-leaning province. And so we'll get Jamie to play the clip here of Jason Kenney talking about cures and vaccines.
Another big story out of Alberta today, the Premier, Jason Kenney, threatening to circumvent the federal government and the federal approvals process in order to access
threatening, I love that word,
tests and treatment for COVID-19. Products require approval from Health Canada, the tests and various treatments, but Jason Kenney told Vassy Kapelos on Power and Politics yesterday he will not wait to use them if they've been approved by certain other countries.
Direction I've given our officials is that if we see a highly credible regulator of medications in a pure jurisdiction like the European Union, Australia, or the United States that has approved a test or a vaccine or medication, we should pursue that. We should not wait for Health Canada to catch up.
Oh, nice, Jason Kenney. Look at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great concept here, and he actually got backlash over it, which I thought was just astounding, as if the Australians are going to be cooking up all of these fake meds that aren't going to work.
Well, that's what the Aussies do. They like to do all these fake tests, make sure we get all garbage here. I'm sorry, I think it was the Chinese that have these bogus tests that they were giving to places like Spain and the Czech Republic. It was not our pure jurisdictions, as Jason Kenney said. So, great point.
And people are coming out basically say that Jason Kenney is wrong and that we can't circumvent Health Canada. And it's built on this incredibly nativist idea that Health Canada is the only government body capable of actually investigating cures or vaccines. Not the British. No, they're not above bar. Not the Americans or the Australians or the Kiwis or the Europeans. It's only Canada who can investigate and approve these medicines, which is just such a silly, it's just such a silly mindset. And we know, not yet, but we know that if we take that mindset to its end, that the cost is just human lives, because it means that we got to wait for the bureaucracy here in Canada to approve various medicines, and that seems like the exact opposite of what regulators should be doing in a global pandemic. And so kudos to Jason Kenney for having the guts to exercise some provincial authority on this and propose to just green light medicines from peer countries. I think that's a great move.
Welcome to Thunderdome.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what we need. Everyone's talking about clamping down on globalization, once all this subsides. But here's an example for where it can actually work. If you have peer jurisdictions, you have liberal democracies that have very good functioning markets, they have great scientists and universities, and they're able to put together great vaccines or products or medicines, you should be able to have them approved in your country. You don't necessarily need to line up your own bureaucrats in order to do that. It's a big issue. Thankfully, we have been able to cover this, and it's something that we're advocating for more and more. You'll hear more about that in the coming weeks. We do have some listeners on the live stream, so a shout out to Jim Young, who's over there in South Korea. Magnus, I think he's in Iceland. Who knows?
Yes.
But we'll get more shout outs. If you're listening, send us a message wherever it is, and we'll give you a shout out there. A couple more clips to look at here, and before we do that, though, let's look at some of the great media hits from our colleagues, David. There's a couple others that we already covered. One of my articles. You've got some. What else do you have going on right now? I know you've got a couple submissions that you're working on, a couple of committees. Tell us a little bit more about that, by the way.
Yeah, so unfortunately, a couple of them have been paused. We're still participating. One is under the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, so working to streamline provincial regulations so that it's easier to do business nationally here in Canada. So we are on basically the committee who submits regulations to be reviewed. So looking forward to that. Once things get back to somewhat normal, I'll be testifying with the Attorney General's office in Ontario about a legal reform proposal to allow for e-notarization for legal documents. Which couldn't come at a better time, because if ever there was a time to fast track that and to kind of modernize the authorization process in the legal system, it's now. And this pandemic has kind of highlighted that. It seems silly that you would still have to actually go into a legal office to physically sign something when you can, with various verifications and checks, do all of that online.
Yeah, I've done that a couple of times. Just use like a website. I pay $11 and I can get something e-notarized. Like, it's pretty awesome.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. So those are two big projects. Outside of that, in Canada, it's now mostly the positive ramifications of allowing for the cannabis industry to stay open for delivery and e-commerce orders. So that's been a huge plus. We got a lot of great coverage with that because we were obviously quite vocal in saying that the government doesn't need to shut down the industry completely. They could limit exposure and allow for curbside pickup and retail delivery, and they did agree to do so. So we're just seeing that the positive ramifications of that, where retailers are really ramping up their delivery capabilities. It means that people don't have to take that extra trip out. So positives all around. Really happy with how that's going.
Great. Yeah, and there's been so much that has been published on the work that we were able to put together on not just cannabis delivery, as David mentioned, also alcohol delivery, perhaps opening up of some state monopolies on liquor, beer, and all the rest, and plenty of jurisdictions, so much more work to do. I wanted to highlight a couple of media hits, though, from our colleagues. Looks like our boy, Bill Nye, the science guy, Bill Wietz, got into the Financial Times. It's a big deal there. Big deal there.
It's a very huge deal.
What's this
very
headline?
Huge deal.
Coronavirus after the lockdown. We'll put this in the show notes as well, consumerchoiceradio.com. So this is about the mobile apps that we're going to start using for this contact tracing everywhere. And Bill had some privacy concerns and talking about how it should be open source and all the rest. And he says, if tracking of individual movement is on the table, then that is unlikely to be in line with existing privacy laws, even in a crisis, says Fiatz. So he's got a couple other points there, but awesome. Good on you, Bill. Even in FT China, this boy was.
Yep. And for our North American listeners who may not know what the relevance there is, that's kind of like being quoted in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. I would say more so than the Wall Street Journal.
It's like the hedge fund Wall Street Journal for like global cabal bankers.
Yeah, it's the biggest. I think it's one of the most reputable newspapers internationally.
No doubt.
So good for Bill.
Good on us, yeah. And then another one is our managing director, Fred Roda, was on TRT World, did an interview about COVID, about comparing everything that's happening with the World Health Organization, talking about the NHS and German healthcare. So some pretty good insights there. That's all linked on our website, so you'll be able to see that. Yeah, there's some pretty good hits, some stuff in German as well. I mean, things are rocking and rolling here. We don't stay quiet. We don't stay down. We might be quarantined, but the work goes on.
Yes, we are still busy. Still busy.
Speaking of someone who's busy,
I am once again asking for your financial support.
Seems as if Bernie Sanders is now knocked off his feet. Looks like he's going to be hanging up the hat. He's done. He threw in for old Joe, and he's not the only one. All the politicians now are coalescing around your boy, Joe Biden, who's going to be the next, apparently, the presumed Democratic nominee. Who knows if they're actually going to have a convention at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's over. I think it's... So what is so striking about this endorsement is that when other people endorsed Joe Biden, when Beto did, when Andrew Yang did, when Tulsi did, everyone raked those candidates, or the Bernie bros raked those candidates over the coals for not being pure enough and for selling out to the establishment. Here we have progressive darling Bernie Sanders doing the exact same thing, and even worse, doing it like the day after the sexual misconduct allegations against Joe really went public. And so it's what a terrible look for everyone on the Bernie side of the Democratic Party, because you had people who were super critical of others for doing what their wokester in chief did himself, and then he did it at the worst time. Now, as these allegations are coming to light, and his candidacy becomes more and more complicated. So yeah, not a great time for the Dems, despite the fact that they now have a nominee. It's still a lot more complicated.
No doubt. This is it's a strange world out there, as we often say.
It's a strange world out there.
So yeah, good shout outs here on the live stream as well. Joe Catanacci out in Wilmington. Hello, sir. Thanks for listening along.
Oh, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
A true friend of the show.
The original friend of the show. Thanks for listening along and sharing us on the Big Talker Facebook page as well. So some of the listeners of the radio program on Saturday are getting a sneak peek as to what's coming their way. Very cool to see. Beautiful. Yeah, we've got one more clip, David, that's lined up here. We got about 15 minutes left in the program. We're in the quarter bottom of the hour. Looking at bailouts. This is discussed a little bit. I think we talked about this probably the last two shows. We have this entire recovered program. Some people have already gotten their Trump bucks in the mail. A number of my friends have been posting, which is totally dumb, by the way. Do not take a screenshot of your bank account where everybody can see your numbers. Like, guys, don't do this.
Yeah. The people who steal identities are just licking their chops right now.
It's like the guys who steal phones and like take pictures of themselves and post it on Facebook. It's like, come on, guys, don't do this. So yeah, a lot of people have been getting their Trump bucks. You are getting a good amount of people who are being able to profit from getting some of these loans. And it's not just people, but companies. And what is being discussed is yet another injection into the airline industry, which is not dormant, by the way. They still are flying flights if you look at the flight tracker and stuff. But, many airlines, such as Austrian Airlines, many European ones, are totally grounded. But they already received $50 billion, our U.S. airlines did, and now they're coming back to the table for more. And thankfully, David, you have a clip that just plays into this and kind of shocks us a bit, but damn, it's true.
Yeah, let's get Jamie to run that one.
All right, Jamie, can you go ahead and pull up that clip, sir? Jamie, I don't know what I think he's asleep.
But are you suggesting, you keep saying propping up zombie companies. Are you arguing to let airlines, for example, fail?
Yes.
Why? I mean, how does that make sense in the broader scheme of the economy?
Because when you look at what it means, this is why I'm saying, this is a lie that's been purported by Wall Street. When a company fails, it does not fire their employees. It goes through a packaged bankruptcy, right? If anything, what happens is the people who have the pensions inside those companies, the employees of these companies, end up owning more of the company. The people that get wiped out are the speculators that own the unsecured tranches of debt or the folks that own the equity. And by the way, those are the rules of the game. That's right, because these are the people that purport to be the most sophisticated investors in the world. They deserve to get wiped out. But the employees don't get wiped out. The pensions don't typically get wiped out.
Why does anybody, I just don't understand, why does anybody deserve, using your word, to get wiped out from a crisis created like this? How does anybody deserve to get wiped out?
Well, but just be clear, who are we talking about? We're talking about a hedge fund that serves a bunch of billionaire family offices? Who cares? Let them get wiped out. Who cares? They don't get to summer in the Hamptons? Who cares?
Who cares?
I mean, there are people. You don't think the employees?
Hold on, Scott.
You don't think the employees of these companies own stocks? I mean, own their stocks, own the company's stocks?
You can look on Bloomberg and you can see what percentage of these companies are typically owned by. These things are owned by BlackRock. These things are owned by these huge, amorphous organizations. Ultimately, downstream, and the employee owns a few $100s or a few $1,000 of shares.
I just don't understand. So this is like a natural disaster. And why does anybody deserve to get wiped out? Wouldn't that be immoral in and of itself?
No, because what's happening right now is what I'll tell you is on Main Street today, people are getting wiped out. And right now, rich CEOs are not. Boards that had horrible governance are not. Hedge funds are not. People are. 6 million people just this week alone basically saying, holy mackerel, I don't know how I'm going to make my own expenses for the next few weeks, days, months. So it's happening today to individual Americans. And what we've done is disproportionately prop up and protect poor performing CEOs, companies, and boards. And you have to wash these people out.
Got to wash them out, David. Wash them out.
What a strange horseshoe where progressives and libertarians can unite and say, no corporate welfare, no corporate bailouts. I mean, I love just the dumbfoundedness of the host in that, where he's like, but why? It was like he had never heard the argument made for the other side ever.
Yeah, but my Wall Street friends have never said that. Come on.
So I love that clip just because it pushes back against the concept that we just have to keep pumping money into things. And I know I've deferred to him in many instances. Justin Amash, U.S. Congressman, possible candidate for president, who knows, maybe launching a bid. He's kicking the tires on that. Has always said the best route here is to send cash to people, not have it filter through businesses, and then make regulatory changes once things get back to normal to allow for these companies to be profitable again. And I know that you've written about this a bit in terms of the airline industry. So, what are some of those things that the government could do to help make these airline companies profitable once people fly again?
Well, definitely look at those airline taxes. A lot of the taxes that the airlines are basically forced to put on passengers because of government rules and regulations. I mean, we still pay a September 11th security fee, mind you, to pay for TSA and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And basically every other country in the world, does very well by just having private security that is contracted by the airport, and they're held accountable to that. It's not a huge bureaucracy. You don't have systematic discrimination as you've had in the TSA, and there's been a lot of lawsuits about that because it's true and it does happen. But look, this is that's one thing you can do. Maybe it would be okay to allow some bankruptcy things to go forward. You can actually have some good entrepreneurs who like to take over things. I know we have that in Austria. The former F1 driver Niki Lauda, there's a couple bankrupt airlines, and he just went shopping, tried them out for a couple years, retooled them. Some of them work, some of them don't, and he provided us with pretty good and cheap airline tickets in the meantime. This is not, you can't have an industry, it doesn't matter what it is, you can't have one that's just reliant upon going and trying to get bailouts every couple of years. And that is, we're talking about banks as much as we're talking about anything else. So yeah, you're right. This is where progressives and libertarians are joining hands finally, once again, after many years of being held apart artificially. We're able to come together and sing Kumbaya together.
Yes, exactly. And,
so it's a good change to see, and it's something else to cover and to investigate. And this is where consumers effectively are going to pay the price. If we're going to have bailouts, not only are you going to be charged higher taxes to pay for it, but then you're going to have higher ticket cost at the end of the day. So then you're just hit twice. And that's not what we need at all. We need to have much more competition. We need to apply the rules of rigor, apply the rules of the market. If you're not able to make it, I'm sorry. Right now, when you have COVID, that is force majeure situation. So yes, it is cool. You can have loan programs, and most small businesses do need this right now. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But to Justin Amash's point, direct cash payments to the people might have been a better way of doing it. I mean, the people who divided it up, did the math. It's like, okay, so essentially, what is it, $1,200 for every person? But then the whole thing actually would equal like $6,000 if we just gave it away to people. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
craziness.
It's like $6,000 or $7,000 a month per family for 3 months if you took the totality of what was spent and just divided it by people, which I think would have been that would probably do a much better job of ensuring that bills are paid, that mortgages are paid, that rent is paid, that you can afford food, that you can make your payments on whatever else is going on, so that you don't have this ballooning. So like with what we've done now, we have a ballooning of federal debt, and that's bad. Future generations are going to pay for that, or you're going to have to deal with inflation, all sorts of problems with that. The flip side is, without cash transfers to individuals, or larger cash transfers to individuals, you have ballooning consumer debt. And so you have people racking up huge
consumer debt, no doubt. Yeah, I'm seeing that. You're just cutting out a bit, David. So thanks, Skype.
Okay.
Thanks, Skype.
Yeah. So that's going to have consequences on the consumer side, and that is going to be really tough to have people dig themselves out of. So the hope on the cash transfer side would be that if you can get people to cover their bills, get people to be able to pay for food, they can at least come through this without mountains of personal debt. Now, that's not the case right now. Debt is going to really, really go up on the individual side as well as the federal government side. So it's almost like we're getting the worst of both worlds.
Because you'd be in jail.
David, I want to throw a surprise clip your way. I actually was doing this a bit in the background when we started. This is breaking. You heard it here first, everybody. Consumer Choice Radio. We have a huge endorsement for Beau Jiden, who is lining up to be the next Democratic nominee. Did you see the latest endorsement?
It depends which one you're talking about.
All right,
maybe.
here we go.
Keep our economy running. And everyone who's making their own sacrifice at home with their families, all for the greater good.
Greater good.
If there's one thing we've learned as a country from moments of great crisis, It's that the spirit of looking out for one another can't be restricted to our homes or our workplaces or our neighborhoods or our houses of worship. It also has to be reflected in our national government. The kind of leadership that's guided by knowledge and experience, honesty and humility, empathy and grace. That kind of leadership doesn't just belong in our state capitals and mayor's offices. It belongs in the White House. And that's why I'm so proud to endorse Joe Biden for President of the United States.
Welcome to Thunderdome.
It's begun. Obama came out, and he's endorsed his boy, Joe Biden.
Do you think this will, like, does this really have any impact? I mean, not because Obama doesn't have impact, but I assume most Americans are looking at that and going, well, duh. Like, of course.
I think it's too little too late. I don't understand what he's been doing. And, you know, we did not take part in this prognostication because we're not really horse trade guys in the political realm. But sincerely, why didn't he do this for Joe Biden months ago? I mean, there's so many questions that are being asked, terrible policies, and Obama's just like sitting on the sidelines and just waits for the Democrats to slaughter each other to come out. Whereas really his word, I don't know, there are two takes you can have on this. Either it's that he would have been the deal maker, the kingmaker. He could have basically crowned whoever the next choice was going to be, or it would be toxic because, as he stated in some other interviews, and I think he said it later in this, you know, he could not be elected today. He's too old school, or not even old school, but too moderate left to kind of get by today, is what I've heard him saying. So I don't know. It's kind of, those are my two views on the Obama thing. I think he speaks to a lot of people who just love to be calmed by somebody who's a politician. I don't necessarily have that need, but a lot of people have that. Yeah.
And Obama has, I mean, neither you or I were or are big fans of the Obama administration, but he is a man of better character, and he carries himself with that presidential, I don't even know what word I'm looking for.
Panache.
Yeah, there you go. He just has that quality about him, which I think is refreshing in the context of newsreels during press conferences. But I mean, it's one of those things. Like, why didn't he? You raise a very good point. Why didn't he do this when Joe was in trouble?
Yeah, and it's not because like Joe was like a skilled manipulator of the political process. It's mostly that, you know, everyone else just kind of fell by the wayside, and then Carole Baskin's virus came out of nowhere and essentially shut this down. And yeah, I don't know what to think. You know, it was good to see the old president there. I think he was wearing a tan suit in the video. So
yes,
good to see he's finally able to let loose without media backlashes and stuff.
Remember the glory days when Obama wearing a tan suit was like a 2-day scandal.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows?
How times have changed.
I probably said something about that back in the day. I don't know. It's like
mostly. So you were anti-tan suit?
No, I was probably just jealous because I can't sport one.
Oh, I'm pro tan suit. Big fan.
Big fan. I'm all in, but I just can't. I don't know, I look a bit weird, and specifically with a quarantine beard, I don't know if too many people are going to be looking stellar in these things.
No, yeah, I'm going to come out looking like Tom Hanks from Castaway.
Yeah, you might, and or Tom Hanks after Carole Baskin's virus. You know, who knows?
Try now.
Yeah, there's plenty more that we'll be able to cover here in the weeks to come. David, I think it's been a good program. It's been a good experiment. Yeah. We've been live on multiple platforms on Facebook and Twitch and Periscope, YouTube. A couple people have been chiming in, sending messages, which is pretty cool to see. Very awesome. Thanks to those of you that shared it. If you liked it, let us know. We'll continue on. If you didn't, I don't want to hear from you anyway. But yes, this program will be broadcast on the Big Talker 106.7 FM out of Wilmington, North Carolina, Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're listening to it on the station, you're probably wondering why I'm saying that, but it's important to note we are a digital show in quarantine, so we got to do everything we can to let our voices trail out and hit the masses, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for a great live show. Thank you to everyone who listened in. Feel free to email us your thoughts and comments. If you have any potential guests you think we should have on the show to interview, let us know. We'll do that. And until next week.
Until next week, David, all the best to you guys. ConsumerChoiceRadio.com. Find all the show notes. Subscribe to the podcast. You can find us in the Spotify platform. You can find us in Apple Podcast and YouTube and all the rest. We're all over. Subscribe to our feed. Stay in touch. Let's talk and promote consumer choice. Until next week, guys. And before we let you go, we're going to do a little bit of a musical outro. This is a song called Survive by the band Late Night Special out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Their album, Halfway to Somewhere, releases today. You can buy that and listen to that on latenightspecial.net. Let's enjoy.